Mali, Niger, and Burkina Faso have officially left ECOWAS. This is a bold and historic moment for Africa. For years, ECOWAS has acted less like a regional alliance and more like a tool for foreign interests, protecting corrupt leaders while punishing nations that dare to stand up for themselves. But today, the message is clear. West Africa is changing. These three countries have rejected the failed system that has kept Africa weak for decades. Big congratulations to Mali, Niger, and Burkina Faso for taking this giant step in the right direction. They have shown that they are no longer willing to be controlled by ECOWAS, by France, or by any foreign power that seeks to keep Africa in chains. They have decided to take their destiny into their own hands. This is what true sovereignty looks like. Now the question is, when will Nigeria wake up? When will we get our own Ibrahim Traore? A leader who is not afraid to stand up for the people. A leader who is willing to put the interests of the nation above the interests of foreign powers and corrupt politicians. Sadly, our own military is too comfortable with the billions they are making from this so-called democracy. They have forgotten the oath they took to serve and protect the people. They have become nothing more than a political branch, protecting corrupt leaders instead of the nation. This is the sad reality of Nigeria today. Our country is sinking, and the people who are supposed to defend it are doing nothing. They are watching as the economy collapses, as insecurity worsens, and as foreign powers continue to exploit our resources. Meanwhile, the military in Mali, Niger, and Burkina Faso saw what was happening to their countries, and they took action. They refused to sit back and allow their nations to be destroyed. They refused to be tools of foreign interests. They chose to fight for their people. May God give us our own Captain Ibrahim Traore here in Nigeria. May he rearrange the mindset of our military so they can remember why they exist in the first place. Because right now they have failed the people. They have abandoned their duty. And if nothing changes, Nigeria will continue on this downward path while other nations rise. This is a moment of awakening for Africa. These three countries have shown that change is possible, that true independence is possible, that Africa does not have to remain under the control of foreign interests. But the question remains, who will be next? Will more African nations wake up and follow this path, or will they remain trapped in a system that only benefits a few? One thing is clear, Mali, Niger, and Burkina Faso have set an example. This decision was not made out of haste or emotion. It was the result of years of frustration, betrayal, and foreign interference that had held these countries back for decades. Their exit is a response to ECOWAS failing them when they needed it the most. The story of why these countries left starts with the reality of who ECOWAS really serves. It was supposed to be a regional bloc that protected economic and political cooperation among West African nations. But what has ECOWAS become? Instead of uniting African nations, it has become a tool of control, ensuring that Western-backed governments remain in power while punishing any nation that tries to take an independent path. For years, Mali, Niger, and Burkina Faso suffered under governments that were completely disconnected from the people. These leaders allowed insecurity to spread, let foreign countries exploit their resources, and followed the instructions of their Western handlers while ignoring the needs of their citizens. These were not governments that truly served their people. They were simply caretakers of Western interests in Africa. In Mali, terrorists were taking over the country, forcing thousands to flee their homes. Instead of getting real solutions, the people were told to wait and trust in Western military alliances like Operation Barkhane, led by France. But what did France do? They stayed for years, promising to fight terrorism, yet the situation only got worse. Meanwhile, France continued benefiting from Mali's natural resources, particularly gold. The people had enough, and in 2020, the military took over, removing a weak government that had done nothing but obey foreign orders. Niger followed a similar pattern. The country has one of the largest uranium deposits in the world, but instead of Nigerians benefiting from it, France was taking 80% of their uranium at almost no cost. This was uranium that powered France's electricity, while over 80% of Niger's population lived without electricity. When the people could no longer tolerate this, the military stepped in and took power. The reaction from ECOWAS? sanctions, threats, and pressure. Burkina Faso was no different. The people had grown tired of a government that could not protect them from terrorist attacks. When Ibrahim Traore took power, he did not waste time. He immediately began securing his country's resources, strengthening national security, and cutting ties with foreign military forces that had failed to help them. His leadership inspired many because, at just 35 years old, he was proving that Africa still had leaders who were willing to fight for their people. But the moment these countries made these moves, ECOWAS, instead of supporting them, declared war on them. Instead of acting as a regional mediator, ECOWAS became a weapon of foreign governments, pushing sanctions and threats to destabilize the new leadership in these countries. They cut off trade, froze their assets, and even discussed sending in military intervention to restore their puppet leaders. This is what led Mali, Niger, and Burkina Faso to say enough is enough. They realized that ECOWAS was not acting in their best interest, but in the interest of foreign powers who still want to control Africa. This is why, on January 29, 2025, they officially cut ties with ECOWAS, declaring that they will no longer be part of a system designed to keep them weak and dependent. Their departure is not just a rejection of ECOWAS, it is a rejection of a failed system that has kept Africa divided for too long. They have chosen sovereignty over submission, independence over exploitation. This is why this moment is so powerful. But this is just the beginning. More countries are watching, more people are waking up. And the question now is, who will be next? The exit of Mali, Niger, and Burkina Faso from ECOWAS is not just a political decision. It is a turning point for West Africa. It is a sign that African nations are beginning to challenge the systems that have kept them weak, dependent, and under foreign influence for too long. These three countries have broken free, but they will not be the last. The cracks in ECOWAS are now too deep to ignore. This organization can no longer pretend to be a champion of regional unity when its actions prove otherwise. If ECOWAS refuses to reform, if it continues to serve the interests of foreign powers instead of the people of West Africa, then its collapse is inevitable. This is a moment of awakening for the entire continent. The people of Africa are watching. Other nations are watching. The world is watching. The old system is falling apart, and a new era of African sovereignty is rising. The question now is, who will be next? Will other African nations continue following the script, obeying outdated institutions that no longer serve them? Or will they stand up, break free, and take back control of their own destiny? The answer will determine the future of Africa. Because make no mistake, this is just the beginning.